Hey guys, Mr. Brown. We've got just a short piece today. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be bouncing back and forth between the Gold Book and Othello. What we've got on page 100 today is the parable of the Prodigal Son. This is obviously from the Christian Bible. We're not going to be teaching this as a piece of theology, as a piece of religious context. We're going to be teaching a story from the most mass-produced book in human history. Guinness Book of World Records estimates that there are roughly 5 billion King James Bibles in circulation. 168,000 Bibles are sold and given as gifts and purchased every single day. So, again, most mass-produced book in human history. If we look on page 100, we learn about theme again. As you read, you can enjoy a literary work on several different levels. On one level, you can read to understand what happens in the work. On the second level, you can try to understand the idea an author had in mind as he or she wrote a work. Each author usually tries to communicate something he or she thinks is true or important about human beings. This truth or important idea is central to the work and is called the theme. Again, the theme is simply the main idea or lesson of the story. All right? Sometimes the theme is stated so that you know exactly what an author thinks about the subject. In fiction, though, the theme is more likely expressed indirectly or implied. You must use literacy clues to draw your own conclusions as to the meaning of the work. As you read the selection, ask yourself, what clues to the author's thoughts and feelings appear in the work? What truth about human beings do you think the author had in mind when he or she created the work? Like we've already talked about when we did The Pardoner's Tale. Theme, more often than not, is not directly stated. Instead, it will be printed between the lines, and you, as the reader, will have to figure out what is being implied. All right? That way leads to one reader coming up with his idea of what the theme is, another reader coming up with her idea of what she thinks the theme is, and somebody else coming up with something completely out of left field, but that still, to them, fits the lesson of the story. And it is entirely possible that it will be valid. Very rarely will you have a story that comes out and says exactly what its theme is, right? Especially in fiction. The King James Bible was produced, as the name would imply, by King James I of England, or James V of Scotland, depending on how you look at it. It was published for a number of reasons. James wanted it to be used as a textbook. He wanted everybody to learn to read and write in the same version of English. He published it to help cement his power as king. He also printed it, of course, to spread the faith. James is a complicated character where religion is concerned. He had a lot of conflicts with Protestant groups like the Puritans, the Pilgrims. Ultimately, he'll end up driving them to the Netherlands and finally America in large numbers. This is after, of course, he drives them to the point where there's a civil war and his sons are killed. His son Charles is killed in the Civil War. But for right now, he's putting it out there for those three reasons I just cited. He himself worked on translating it from Latin to English. A number of religious scholars did, and a number of the playwrights that we've been discussing did as well. Shakespeare supposedly helped work on the Psalms. Now, we do know that there are some differences between a English King James Bible and a Latin Roman Catholic Bible, an Anglican Bible. Definitely between the Greek and the Latin there are differences, and definitely between the Greek and the Hebrew there are differences. Some of these are accidents, some of these are mistranslations, some of these are misinterpretations. Some things we think perhaps are deliberate changes made by certain people to push certain doctrinal differences. but that's for somebody else to get into in a different class. We're not going to open that can of worms, right? It begins on page 101. A certain man had 2 sons. The younger of them said, "Father, may I have those goods that are be mine now rather than waiting until after your death?" The father said, "Yes." He then divided his goods, giving half to his younger son. Several days later, the younger son took what was his and journeyed to a far country. There he wasted what was his in riotous living. When his goods were gone, a mighty famine arose in that land. The son was in want. He went to work as a servant in that country. His master had him feed the swine in the fields. He was so poorly fed that he would have been happy to fill his belly with the corn husks that the swine ate. All right? So this kid goes to his dad, and he says, "Dad, I'd like to have my inheritance now rather than waiting until you're dead." And the father, amazingly enough, says, "Okay." And he takes half of everything he's got, and he's got a lot. This is a very, very wealthy man. He takes half of what he's got, and he just gives it to his younger son. All right? Have you ever noticed that the more money you've got, the more easy it seems to spend? Bee. Bumblebee. Not the Autobot. Well, if she stays up there, we're happy. All right. Anyway, back on the story. Well, this kid just basically hit the lottery. Half of everything it took his father a lifetime to earn. Decades of hard work. So we're talking, like I said, lottery levels of money. Those of you who may work, well, the way things are right now, but, when things get back to normal, how many of you get your paycheck on Friday and it seems like by Monday you're rolling pennies? All right, keep all these things in mind as we continue. The kid goes to wherever the hot vacation spot was 2,000 years ago, and he parties just as hard as his body will physically stand. Wine, women, song all day long, all night long. And again, Dad gave him millions, all right? So he doesn't just blow through it overnight, but he burns through it pretty quick. In just a few years, he's managed to just waste. That bee's making me nervous. Everything it took his father a lifetime to accumulate. We're not supposed to kill bees, but I'm getting ready to kill this one. Bee, you go in my house for dead. Alright, hang on a sec. I didn't kill it, I just drove it away. Alright, anyway. So, still, despite the fact it takes him years to do it, he manages to just blow decades worth of his father's hard work. Millions upon millions of dollars. And it's about the same time he reaches into his pocket and starts pulling lint out of his pockets because the money is gone. And the party's over, and all the wine's gone, and the women are gone, and the song's over. There's a famine in this country. People are literally starving to death. And this man who had servants of his own has to become a servant himself. He's tending some guy's pigs out in the fields. And you have to know a little bit about the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. The old hardcore versions of these religions basically all say there is just about no more filthy, dirty, unclean animal in existence than a pig. All right? Now, they make for good eating. We all love bacon, right? But according to this, this kid is taking care of the swine. He's hit rock. He hasn't just hit rock bottom. He's smashed into the bottom, punched through, and kept on going. He's looking at the stuff he's feeding the hogs. Like he's slopping the hogs, and he's thinking, I could probably eat it, and I could probably keep it down. Excuse me. He soon came to his senses and asked himself, How many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare while I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father. I will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. I am no longer worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. Now, unless you have lived a blessedly peaceful existence, at some point in your lives, you have had to go to the parents, the parental figure, the authority figure, the guardian, whoever it is, and had to admit to them, I screwed up. I am in it about this deep. All right? Raise both hands. All right? And so the kid, he's faced with that moment. He has to face his father. He realizes the only way it's going to get better is if he goes home. All right? He's starving to death, and he thinks, my dad always takes excellent care of his people. They always have plenty to eat. They never suffer. I'm going to go home, face my dad, tell him what happened. And basically what he's planning to do is to enslave himself to his father. Now, if you look at that paragraph, the word forgiveness does not appear anywhere in that paragraph because he's not intending to ask his father for forgiveness. He's figuring he is too far gone. He has screwed up too bad. I can't be forgiven for this. And it's easy to comprehend why he's thinking this. Because, again, he wasted millions and millions of dollars, all right? He just blasted his way through decades of his father's hard labor, and he has nothing to show for it at all right? So he doesn't intend to go home and ask his dad for forgiveness because there's no forgiveness for this. He's just going to ask his dad to put a roof over his head, feed him, and let him spend the rest of his life working off this debt to his father. All right? He soon arose and went back to his father's home. When he was still a great way off, his father saw him coming. His father was filled with compassion. He ran to his son and hugged him. The son said, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight. I am no longer worthy to be called thy son. However, the father said to his servants, Bring forth the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. Bring the fatted calf here and kill it. Let us eat and be merry, for this my son who was dead is alive again. And they began to make merry. All right? He manages to make his way home. And he's been gone for years, and apparently with no communication with his family whatsoever, to the point where they had begun to believe he's dead. He's dead in a ditch somewhere. He's got to be. All right? He makes his way home, and the father sees him coming and rushes out to meet him and just wraps him up in the great big old bear hug. And the kid is trying to say to him, Dad, I screwed up. I screwed up so bad. But the dad doesn't hear any of it. All right? All he knows is he's home. He's safe. He's alive. And he tells his servants, bring him clothes and put on him. And prepare a great feast. We're going to celebrate my son home and alive. He who was dead is alive again. All right? My dad would have made sure I was okay, and then he would have killed me. All right? The elder son had been in the fields. There's an older brother in this equation. Bugs, all right? As he came home and drew near the house, he heard music and dancing. He called to one of the servants and asked what all this meant. The servant replied, Thy brother has come home. Thy father has killed the fatted calf and thinks of his safe return. All right? Now, if you are the older sibling, all right, or you have older siblings, you may have run into this situation where it seems like the younger siblings get away with murder. All right, they get away with doing things that would have gotten you absolutely killed if you're the older sibling. Partly, this is because parents mellow with each new child. They figured out, okay, I'm not going to kill this one. I know what to do. I don't have to worry quite so much, and I can be a little bit less strict. All right, which is kind of bogus because it makes basically as the older child means you were the test model. Anyway. All right. So the older son basically had stayed home all this time and worked his fingers to the bone, sun up to sundown, and took care of his father's farms and tended to his father's businesses. He worked, all right? He had responsibilities, and he took care of them, all right? And so he comes from a hard day of work, and he hears this party going on, and he finds out what it's for, and the elder son became angry. Can't blame him. He refused to enter the house. Therefore his father came out and entreated the elder son to join the party. The elder son replied, Lo, these many years, all these years, I have served thee. At no time did I transgress thy commandments. Yet thou never gave me even a small goat that I might make merry with my friends. When the prodigal son, the wasteful son, returns home after squandering his inheritance, you butcher for him the fatted calf. The kid is mad. He feels like dad is showing favoritism. All my life, I've done exactly what I was supposed to do. Nobody had to tell me to do it. I knew I was supposed to do it, and I did it. All right? I worked. All right? I took care of all my responsibilities. And you didn't thank me in any small way. I mean, you killed for him the fatted calf. You didn't even give me a little tiny goat that I could have a barbecue with my buddies. You slaughter for him the fatted calf after he's wasted his inheritance, and you throw him a party for it. All right? The father said unto him, Son, thou art always with me, and all that I have is thine. Everything I had was waiting for you to ask for it. All right? If you had held your hand out, I would have filled it. Remember in the beginning of the story, the younger son asked for his half of the inheritance, and the father gave it to him. All right? He's telling the older son, all you had to do was ask, and I would have given it to you. All right? It is meet, appropriate, that we should make merry and be glad because thy brother who was dead is alive again. He who was lost is now found. All right? He's telling his son, we're not celebrating the fact that your brother wasted his inheritance. We're not celebrating the fact that your brother lost everything that was his. You'll notice he's not saying basically, I'm going to give him half of what is left. So you're only getting a quarter of what you were supposed to get, or half of what you were supposed to get. Nowhere, the kid is not off scot-free, all right? But he does say, we are celebrating the fact that your brother, who we believed was dead, is alive. He who was dead to us is alive. He's home. He's safe. He is with us once more, all right? Now, your book, you'll see it in the questions on page 105, speaks of a thematic passage. And the thematic passage is exactly what it sounds like it is. It's a passage or part of the story where the theme is located. And here in this last paragraph, specifically in that last sentence, he who was lost is now found, we find the theme of the story. But it's couched in symbolism and imagery and symbolic language. The basic theme of this story is that forgiveness is obtainable provided that there is penitence. Now, penitence is the act of acknowledging wrongdoing and a sincere effort to make amends for it, to make it right. All right? Consider the word penitentiary. All right? It's not supposed to be a warehouse where you shove people for crimes committed and then let them out after a while. It's a place where you're supposed to go and be educated as to what you did wrong and to be given a chance to make amends for what you did wrong. Right? Very, 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 very seldom over the many thousands of years of human existence has that been what penitentiaries and prisons have actually been. But the story basically is saying that, you can be forgiven for almost anything you've done. The kid, thought he'd done too much. That he had gone too far, and there would be no forgiveness for this. But Christianity teaches, and I guess I have to dip into this a little bit because this story was basically one of the ones that Jesus would use in his teachings. That there's nothing that you can ask forgiveness for and not receive forgiveness for it, provided you are penitent. All right, You have to really, honestly, sincerely understand that what you did was wrong and want to make it right. All right? This is not, oh God, 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 please, 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 don't let those blue lights turn on. And I swear I will never, ever, 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 ever do this again. And then they don't come on, and next week you do it again. This is, you really understand that through what I did or didn't do, through my actions or inactions, I caused harm. All right? And I need to make it right. All right? That's the difference. That's what penitence is. All right? The kid basically knows, and I'm going to go into more detail about this in the notes. The kid basically is a wrongdoer. All right? The youngest son is a wrongdoer. Someone who is living outside the laws and commandments and beliefs that he has been taught and doing things that he knows he's not supposed to do. And eventually there is a price to be paid for this. The kid is basically just gone completely buck wild, spending dad's money like it was water. And eventually he comes crashing, it all comes crashing down to around his ears. And only when he is willing to face the music, when he's willing to go home and admit what he's done wrong and pay the price for that wrongdoing, does his situation finally begin to get better. All right? He's basically on a very sharp downward curve until he finally is willing to face the music, go home, and make it right. And it slowly begins to get better. This part always happens extremely fast. The coming back up part is always extremely slow. It's like a roller coaster. You get down quick, sickeningly quick, and then the climb back up is agonizingly slow. All right? The older son is an upright man, one who basically is, like we just said, taking care of his responsibilities, handling his duties, all right, being responsible. And his earthly life may not be a bed of roses, but according to Christian doctrine and the other two Abrahamic religions, Judaism and Islam, he is promised a great reward in the hereafter. All right, the dad tells him that, I know you've worked hard all your life. I know it hadn't been easy, but it's all waiting for you to take it. All you got to do is hold your hand out, and I will fill it. All right? And then there's the dad himself. Guess who the dad is? God. All right? The dad is God. Not quite 100%. He all loving, yes, absolutely all loving. But not 100% all forgiving. There's a price tag attached, and that price tag is penitence. All right, you want to get off the hook, you got to work for it. All right, and lastly, you've got the celebration that the father throws. Have to dip into the religiosity of the story a little bit here, because there's no other way to talk about it, or at least not an easy way to talk about it. The celebration that the father holds, explaining to his older son, we're celebrating the fact that your brother who was lost to us has been found. He who was lost has been found. He who was dead is alive again. All right? This is the penitence of the wrongdoer. All right? This is the reclamation of the sinner. All right? Again, to dip into the religion, Christianity teaches that a sinner is like one who is already dead. Right? Remember what we talked about when we did the Partner's Tale? We talked about the wage of all sin is death. All right? Well, here's the price tag. When the sinner is penitent, when the wrongdoer recounts of what they have done wrong, it is said to be a cause of great rejoicing. The sinner, who was like one already dead, is said to be born again. All right, into a new life free from sin. He who was dead is alive again. All right, so there's that. And like I said, I'm going to type all this up so that you guys can look at it and it'll be a little more clear to you. If you have questions or comments, feel free to email or text or even call. I'm here at your disposal. Thanks. Hope you have a good day.